Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Tie Your Shoes Reviews. While the last video was more or less an introduction of how I do things, this time around I'll be heading into more familiar territory. I mentioned before how Tekken 3 was how I was introduced to the series, but I also recall seeing this game a lot as a kid. At the youth center I spent several summer vacations at, I saw the older kids playing Tekken 2 with Big Head mode, and I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. I asked my mom for a copy of Tekken 3 while on a shopping trip, and she ended up getting both that game as well as Tekken 2. She's the best, I don't deserve such kindness. I played this game a lot before the PS2 caught the world by storm, albeit not as much as the next game, so unlike the first game where I jumped in extremely late, I have nostalgic attachment to Tekken 2 and every other main fighting game going forward. There's my personal history, so how did this game come to be? Obviously Tekken was a slam dunk when it came to console sales and was pretty popular in the arcades. So naturally Namco made a sequel released for arcades in 1995 and on the PlayStation the next year. Tekken 2 was met with overwhelming praise upon release. It was the top arcade game for 2 years, and the PlayStation version sold over 1 million copies in Japan alone. The game was pretty big in the mid-90s, but does it still hold up today? Let's enter the ring again and find out. 2 years have passed since Kazuya Mishima defeated his father, Heihachi, at the end of the King of Iron Fist tournament. With the former president of the Mishima Zaibatsu presumed dead, his son rules the company in the shadows and effectively plunges the world into chaos. Oh, you thought Kazuya was the hero? Turns out he's the devil and indulges in being a bigger asshole than his father. Speaking of Heihachi, turns out he's still alive and is pretty angry his son beat him and twisted his company. In retaliation to realizing this, Kazuya announces the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2. All the competitors from the previous tournament are present along with a bevy of new faces. First up is the Chinese super cop Lei Wulong, a drunken fistmaster who enters the tournament to investigate the Zaibatsu as it is tied to the Mafia. Bruce Irvin is a kickboxer on the run from said Mafia and is hired by Kazuya as a mercenary. Baek Do-san is a Korean Taekwondo champion who enters the tournament after being framed for wrecking martial law's new dojo. Roger is a genetically engineered kangaroo with boxing gloves. No doubt the result of Kazuya's influence. If you think that's weird, they also reanimated a velociraptor named Alex and makes it fight with boxing gloves too. I suppose they had to top the bear from Tekken 1, and I say they did it. Oh, Tekken, never change. I suppose that leads us up to Jun Kazama, an officer of an animal protection program who enters the tournament to not only arrest Kazuya for his crimes against nature, but also to purify him of the evil corrupting him. This game treats her as a secondary protagonist next to Heihachi, and the reason for this isn't exactly clear, at least not in this game. Just like the previous game, Tekken 2 has CGI endings for the characters when you clear their arcade ladder. It's not just the base roster this time though, the unlockable boss characters have their own endings as well. The presentation is less Uncanny Valley than before, but still seems like a dollar store variant of Reboot. Still, the stories told in most of these endings are very fascinating, even if they're at least 20 seconds long. Here's a rundown of some of my favorites. Nina has a surprisingly somber ending as she brings flowers to her father's grave. Her sworn enemy Anna appears, and Nina draws a gun on her, but they both agree to put their feud on hold to respect their deceased father. With how often they're at each other's throats in the series, you forget they're sisters, so I thought this was a sweet ending. Beck sits on a park bench much like Keanu Reeves as he reminisces of his late father. Armor King, the rival of the OG Jaguar Man, prepares for a wrestling match when he's stopped by an internal injury, but he trudges on anyway like the armored Chad he is. I find the more down-to-earth endings more intriguing than the goofier ones, and Tekken 2 definitely has those in spades, and I'm glad Namco took this direction for at least a few of them. I'll save the canon ending for last this time, since these games will be more story-driven from here on out. Aside from arcade and versus modes, the PlayStation version of Tekken 2 adds in several new game modes to give you more bang for your buck. The first is Time Attack, which is self-explanatory. You clear 10 stages as fast as you can. Survival mode has you defeat as many opponents as possible with only a single health bar, and losing it all ends the run. Practice is something that should have been in the first game, and I'm so glad is now a standard thing. You practice combos on a dummy for as long as you desire, giving you a better feel for your character. The best part of it is, you can look at a move list on the pause screen and try them out. Hallelujah! Tekken 2 is very similar in structure to its predecessor with several tweaks and new features. You still use all 4 face buttons for all your punches and kicks, and the rules established previously hold true as well. However, there's a bunch of new mechanics that flesh out combat. Some characters like Nina and King have access to chain throws, where during the grapple animation, you can input specific commands and keep the pain train going. There are also several characters that have reversal commands, where pressing back plus the throw command in time with your opponent's attack counters with a savage blow. Kazuya and Heihachi are the only two characters in the game that perform the sidestep. All the characters from Tekken 1 return, with Heihachi being the starter character and Kazuya as the final boss, and all are more viable since they're given new moves and combos to go with them. Even the unlockable boss characters sport updated designs and feel less like clones of the original cast, but they still feel like blatant copycats. All the newbies sport fresh new fighting styles and strategies, one of my favorites being Jun Kazama. There's something very cathartic about timing a reversal from an opponent's reckless assault. Maybe it's the crunchy sound design. Speaking of sounds, I love Tekken 2's soundtrack. Unlike the first game where I thought the music was good but mostly forgettable, this one has a bunch of memorable and catchy tunes I often catch humming myself on occasion. The arranged OST on the PlayStation version is great too, but I prefer the original arcade music since it's more energetic. The graphics are a step up too. The animations are more fluid, the textures on character models and backgrounds are more detailed. This is a pretty fighting game for the PlayStation. Back to the gameplay, Tekken 2 feels more fluid than the first game, but still feels kinda stiff. Some attacks I do the correct input for don't come out sometimes, and just like before, whiffed attacks lead to devastating punishers. It still takes too long to get back up after knockdowns, and cheap shots are still abound. The computer AI feels like it's way more aggressive than the first game, and I swear it takes full advantage of input ratings before you even press a button. Cheap 90s fighting game bullshit at its finest. And the clear-cut example that comes to mind is the Battle of Kazuya in the arcade mode. He will whoop your ass with punches that hit like a truck, and I'm pretty sure he can read your mind of how often counter hits land. This is probably the hardest fight in the game, but it's not even the real final boss. That's reserved for Devil, Kazuya's transformed state and manifestation of his malice. He hits hard, flies, and shoots frickin' laser beams attached to his head. But if you beat Kazuya before, this isn't all that difficult. I think now's a good time to wrap this up with the true ending. Heihachi blazes through the tournament and beats up his ungrateful son. He even punches the Satan out of him. Heihachi then carries the unconscious Kazuya off the edge of a cliff. Did I say cliff? I meant an active volcano! Father of the Year, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, Tekken 2 is a major improvement over the first game, and I still think it's rather fun today. But the issues I had with Tekken 1 are still present, but those are more minor nitpicks than major problems. Still, if I had the choice to only play the PlayStation era Tekken games, this would be my second choice. The first is obviously Tekken 3, which I'll cover next time. Ooh, I can't wait! Anyways, thank you all for watching, and have an awesome day.
You win. Double KO.